Men can't resist women who do this. In this training, you're going to discover how to make a man come closer to you, to want to pursue you and chase you for a loving relationship, a long-term committed relationship, and also what makes a man pull away, lose interest, become distant, and not see himself having a long-term future with you. Today, I'm excited to present this training to you because we've actually interviewed two of our friends, Cody and Esther Cottle, and he's going to be sharing and she's going to be sharing what was it that made him attracted and had him fall in love with her to chase her for a loving relationship where they are now happily married. So let's dive right in. How did you guys meet? What was the journey? And what made you really be attracted and fall in love with Esther, Cody?
Ooh. Magnetize you. Did I
It was just a magnet. She just had the right magnet.
In her pocket.
Yeah, it was in her pocket. Negative, positive. It pulled me to her. I had no way out.
We got to sell that. We're going to create a product.
You guys should have a magnet.
The man magnet you could just put in your pocket and it just draws.
$1 million idea. We'll take a royalty. It's all cool.
Yes. We'll split it.
Well, first of all, it's an honor to be here with you guys.
Thank
Thank you for welcoming us in your home, having us on the podcast. Love what you guys are doing. Relationships are the foundation of life, and teaching me how to do them well is really important. So Esther and I'll kick us off. Love my life. I think it was 2021. It was Valentine's Day, and I was invited to an event. It was basically a singles mixer for Christians, and my buddy invited me. I was reluctant to go. I didn't want to go. Guys, most of us don't want to go to things like that. But a good friend of mine that loved me talked me into it. And I was like, sure, I'll go. At that event, I met Esther, but she was there for a different reason than me. Mm-hmm. And I think you talk about what attracted me to her. Well, I'm at an event full of 60 single women. And I'm mingling. I'm having a great time. I met amazing women that night. But Esther was there for a different reason. She launched a book called Single Shouldn't Suck. And she had a table to sell that book. And I will say, as a man, one of the things I'm attracted to, and maybe this is my personality type, I don't know, is a woman who's on mission. When I see a confident woman who's going after what God has called her to and focused, it's very attractive to me as a man versus a woman just waiting around for a guy to come to her. So she's there, has a book table at the end of the event. It's like, hey, I'd love to buy, I'm like, I'll buy a book for me and my friends. And that was my way to talk to her, like, I got to buy a couple, you know what I'm saying?
Great. It's a great lead magnet.
The best way to get her, Ben, is
listening.
like, you buy, like, if some other men are buying books, you buy multiple books. Our first date, I bought all the Girl Scout cookies. I bought them out.
So if you're listening and you're single, write a book or get AI to write a book for you and go to your local market or church and just,
set up a booth.
Set up a table booth.
Set up a booth. You're
just, the guy that buys two or more, it's a
know.
good shot to put your number in that one.
That's the one.
Business strategy for your dating life.
Yeah. So she wrote this book, Single Shouldn't Suck. And I'm a single guy. I was interested to read it. And I bought it for my friend and I. And I told her, I said, hey, like, I have this vision one day of having kids. And I'm an entrepreneur. So I have all kinds of books written by so many people. Many of friends and people I've met that have wrote notes in the front page and signed it. It's actually like one of my favorite assets to pass on to my kids. I can give my kids millions of dollars, but to hand over a bookshelf full of wisdom and knowledge, many of the authors that I personally knew or met, and tell the story of how I knew them. So I was like, well, worst case scenario, I'm going to get another one of these for my future kids. And so she signs, writes this amazing note, and then I'm standing there, and the weirdest thing happens. She rips the book out of my hands. Like imagine I buy the book. She writes a note in it for me and my buddy, gives it to us. We're done. Well, I'm standing there. There's about 12 other dudes around trying to flirt with her, and she just rips my book out of my hands. And this girl's weird.
That's bold.
And
it's called a pattern interrupt.
She starts, she definitely pattern interrupt. You guys probably got all the strategies, the whole playbook on it, whatever. She probably watched your course or something, and she wrote her number in it. So I get it back, I open your number, I start cheesing. I'm like, none of you guys got numbers. And so that's how we met. Mm-hmm. And then what's really weird is I didn't follow all the rule books, and I texted her that night. I don't know if people say you're supposed to wait. No response. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. And then I message her on Instagram like, hey, I have a podcast. You're an entrepreneur. Do you ever want to come on my podcast and tell your story and what you're doing and talk about your book? And she blasts me. She says, why would you invite me on your podcast, but I gave you my number and you won't even text me?
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, what do you mean? I did text you.
I was nicer than that.
No.
I did call you out, but I was like, it was like more flirty.
Yeah.
A little more
I
graceful.
don't know, maybe
Yeah, it wasn't that aggressive.
it was like, oh. So I send a picture, a screenshot, on my phone of texting her. She's like, that's not my number, dummy. And I mixed up a 4 and a 9. It did look like the way she wrote it.
Yeah, I wrote it fast.
So some random person got a text that was very nice for me that night, and I accidentally kept that Esther contact. And so funny, the next year on Valentine's Day, I texted that number again. They got 2 numbers or 2 texts from me. Probably like,
did they ever respond?
Weirdo? No.
Okay. They just deleted it.
Yeah, probably just like delete.
Thought it was a
I'm not
scammer.
Esther. And that's how we met.
Wow. So
Tell
I'm
Mark's
curious.
story.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. One question I had. So did you, just to clarify, did you ask her for a signature in the book at all? Because you were talking about how you like to pass down the books to your kids.
I asked her to be willing to write a note and sign the book.
Oh, go. So you
But
did.
not for
But
a
not the phone number.
I
So
didn't ask for a
she
number.
signed it, but then she thought about it and grabbed the book back and put the number in.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because I had a lot of guys at the table. I mean, that night you're just being swarmed.
You know how it is as an attractive woman. You got men lining up everywhere you go.
You know what happens.
And
But
she's making sales.
when you're
Yeah.
working in the field,
Nice, yeah.
But there were a lot of guys at that table, and they were all asking me for signatures and flirting with me and stuff. And so I wanted to show him that I was only interested in talking to him. That I wanted it was I wanted to work my table and make my sales, and so it was flirting back. But I was really interested in him.
Wow.
And so that's why I did
Why
that.
were you interested in me?
Ooh, let them ask the questions, honey. Yeah, so
I'm like that too, Cody. I'm like a
words
fishing
affirmation
for-
guy. I'm like, just tell me. That's
Fishing
why I
for
really
compliments.
said yes
Why
to the
else do you
podcast.
love me? Why else do you love me? Yeah, I do that sometimes.
we'll need another podcast episode for that.
That'll be the podcast
Yeah.
for men.
I'm going to play it on
Exactly.
replay
Yeah.
every morning. It's how I'm going to start my day. Just confident.
Yeah, on your phone. It's like the alarm.
Yeah. So that's how it happened. That's how we met, and then the journey of dating was a whole different story.
Okay. Did you want to ask anything about that?
Well, first off, I love that how God works, right? Because sometimes God works through other people, and for you, Cody, you didn't want to go.
Yeah.
So you didn't have like this agenda, Sometimes we have this agenda where we're like, we're in control,
Yeah.
not God, and we're going to set out sail for our own destiny, right? And you were like, I don't want to go. I don't want to go.
And I almost didn't. Even the
Yeah.
day of, I was looking for every excuse in the book to not go.
Yeah.
My buddy's like, I'll drive. I'm like, no.
I'll pay you.
No.
I'll do whatever I need to.
That's so funny.
That's a
Oh,
good
you want to
lesson.
know another funny thing? The friend that talked me into going didn't end up going. Yeah.
That sounded like Brody's story, but for why?
Yeah, a friend who invited me to move to Hawaii, and then we went, and he didn't end up coming. I went to Hawaii by myself.
Oh,
Similar journey, and that's where I met
So
Antia.
for you, it was just an event. For him, it was a whole move.
Yeah.
Wow, man, you really took the
To
lead.
different states.
yeah, we met in Oahu, so it was it was very similar in that way.
But it's God. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying.
Divine
So,
alignment.
Yeah.
Totally.
But that's a good lesson for everyone, which is, I love this saying from Woody Allen, which is 80% of success is just showing up.
Yeah.
So that's good for whether you're a man or woman, just the act of showing up to put yourself and make yourself available to meet somebody. Like, that's huge. Otherwise, most people are just staying at home, scrolling social media, and then why am I still single? And why is nobody approaching me? Well, you're not available.
If you don't have
sure.
exposure, any opportunity for that to happen and God to work through those moments, like if you just stay home all day, how could you ever expect to meet someone?
Yeah. And so there's a concept I want to get your guys' thoughts on, because I think it's going to relate to this. But something I've been teaching some of our women recently is this concept versus signaling versus initiating. So signaling I view as like a feminine way of expressing interest to a man. So it's like the flower opening its petals and saying, here I am, I'm available, I'm interested. And then the initiating is like the honeybee coming to the flower, bringing the pollen, or texting her, calling her back. And so I view that's what you were doing in that moment, is it was definitely a assertive move to grab the book and write your phone number in it. But in a way, it was just another version of signaling your interest, saying, here, I'm available. If you want to text me, call me, like, I'm interested.
Yes.
But you didn't ask him for his number and then start
Right.
texting him that night, which would have been moving more into the masculine of like initiating things and really
Totally.
moving it forward and taking charge. But yeah, so I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, either of you, on any other ways you may have been signaling interest or
I think her dress was signaling.
yeah.
I had a pretty hot dress on that night. That helps. It really helps. But in a really also just very, I think, carrying yourself in a way that's alluring, but not like leading with your sex appeal and leading with that physical component as like my main bait, right? Because that again kind of leads into more of that initiating, like all about me. Like it's very self-serving, and it's not in a way of inviting. It's just like you're just wanting attention. So there is a line there that I think too. But I totally agree with that. I love that analogy of signaling, and I think that it's really leaning into just your personal confidence and self-esteem, and knowing what you're worth and your identity outside of dating. Like it really, your beliefs about yourself, your beliefs about even that you're worth being pursued.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that you need to live in a cave and you need to just like be quiet all the time and never let a man know that you're interested or that you think they're cute. And I think that so many women are plagued with fear and intimidation. And they're afraid that signaling is that desperate energy, and signaling is overstepping, and it's, I'm getting in God's way. I mean, he got my number, and like he said, like I didn't get a text from him, so here I am thinking he's not interested.
Yeah.
And so there was that intimidation of, I put myself out there, and I feel like a little bit rejected. But what was really cool was that day, I really felt like, wait, no, I'm worth being pursued. I have all these other guys anyways that, I met that night. I really liked him, but let me continue to be
Plan B,
alluring.
guys.
I still wasn't,
Just for the
like, you were not Plan B, is that what you're saying?
I said they were.
Oh, yeah, they were Plan B. They were.
For the record.
But
No offense to
I
any
didn't
of those
let
guys
that-
watching.
So we love you.
See how the story ended way better.
Yeah.
But I think that can happen is that you start to, you allow that rejection to really hurt your self-esteem, when really, no, that has nothing to do with me. And if I had not called him out that moment, if I hadn't stayed confident, then who knows if we'd even continue talking. I mean, I think that it would come back up again. But yeah, like I had to overcome that intimidation and like continue the signaling in your analogy, but really just stay alluring and stay in my lane and be confident. I said yes to the podcast interview, and then it called him out in that, and then it led to further conversation.
Yeah, the other analogy I like is like back in the olden times when a woman would drop her handkerchief.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
old
Drop the
metaphor.
handkerchief.
And I still had to pursue her.
Yes.
So it's not like she did put her number in the book, but I had to initiate buying the book. I had to reach out. I had to text her. Like I messaged her on Instagram. So I think there is a balance of, and as guys sometimes too in today's world, it's a weird culture right now, especially you go in the Christian culture. Like, how do you really know if it's okay to pursue a woman and you're not being creepy and you're not being weird? So I do think women need to signal, kind of be the beautiful flower. And there needs to be curiosity. There needs to be a pursuit of, man, I'd love to get to know her better.
Yeah.
And how do you do that? Well, if women are closed off, it's really hard.
Yep.
So I love what you're saying and teaching, because that's important. And it is up to men. Men need to get slapped upside the head too, because men aren't being men anymore. And men need to pursue.
Yeah, that's why dropping the hanky, it's like it's like, hey, it's okay to come forward. Like, I'm interested, which could be as simple as eye contact or a smile. You said you had like open body, you were friendly and you're flirty during that. And the other thing I wanted to ask you about, which I think, there's a lot of things here, but it's actually very interesting to unpack that moment when he messaged you on Instagram and you said you were disappointed that he didn't reach out to you, which that goes along with our teachings as well, which is, you in that moment are actually showing that you're high value. We use this term, it gets floated around sometimes, but the way I look at it as high value is like you feel comfortable sharing your feelings. You felt disappointment probably, or rejection, or just sadness or frustration, whatever you felt that he didn't text you. Confusion, yeah.
Probably confusion. I
And then
would
like
say,
you said,
For sure.
a lot of women wouldn't say anything. They would just be like, oh, hi, it's so great.
Yeah.
I'm glad you texted me back. Or
Yes.
they just continue. But you're like, wait, I felt sad that you didn't text me back, and I want to talk about this. I want to tell you that that's how I felt. There was an impact there, because a high-value woman believes her feelings, when you go back to belief, which is really powerful, and we can unpack some more of that too, because this whole talk is about the confident mindset, right? The belief is your feelings are worth sharing. your feelings are worth being heard by him. And that shows you're a confident, high-value woman, the fact that you even shared that. Do you want to say anything else about that in that moment? Like what gave you that courage and the confidence to really speak up and share your confusion and disappointment when he didn't text you back?
Yeah, it was interesting because in that season, I'd actually been doing a study on breaking intimidation. And so I was challenging myself to lean into moments of intimidation.
Nice.
So I'm like, whoa, challenge accepted in front of me here. I was so scared. I remember driving, and you know how on Instagram when you send a message, like if you don't slide it over to cancel it, that it will automatically send. And back then there was no unsend button. So I was like, I almost drove off the road because I was recording the message to send him to call him out. And I didn't like what I said. So I'm like, trying to delete the message before sending it.
You're like, maybe it's a little too harsh.
I was like, I'm so intimidated with that. I got like sweating. I got the hot sweats, and like it was just so much. But I felt that overwhelming sense of, oh my gosh, I'm so intimidated by this experience, and I'm learning to lean into it and not run from it. And so I just remember everything that I had been learning about breaking intimidation, because it's a spirit of fear. And so I recognized that because I had been learning about that and realized, hey, actually, like, this actually could turn into a great opportunity, even if it's not a relationship. Yeah. And my focus in that season was going after my calling, like he said. And that's even what led us to even meet and him be invited to that, because I had started a podcast 6 months prior to that. And the guy who I was doing the podcast with is who invited him to that event that night. So my purpose was my mission. And this experience, this encounter, only was going to refine me, and I was going to get a podcast interview out of it. So
which we never did till like 2 years later.
We didn't.
You're like, what happened to that podcast?
Yeah. I think at the core of it all, I was really focused on my own personal growth and saw it as an opportunity of, wow, okay, I can lean into this, and the outcome might not be what I hope it's going to be, but I'm open to that, you know?
But also the story that I like is that, Cody, that you actually reached out again, right? Mm-hmm. Because so many women say like, oh, wait, but what if it's the wrong number? Or what if the hamster ate the number or whatever, right? They come up with all those like excuses why the man wouldn't pursue. And that actually like totally signs the belief that I have, which is,
if a man wants to pursue you, he'll find a way.
Totally.
It's not hard to find her on social media.
Out or whatever,
it's not hard. Like, if you know their name, you can find them.
Yeah, totally.
You know, so yeah.
But I want to drive that point home. And I'm curious to hear, Esther, for you too. It's like, when you started to date Cody, like how was he different from the guys that you dated before?
Ooh, that's a great question.
That is a good question.
Well, I think part of it goes back to what even attracted me to him, which was I knew that he was also very ambitious and driven and an entrepreneur and someone who loved the Lord. We had so many different things in common, but I was so curious about him. So there was just a lot of curiosity there, and he really motivated me in a lot of ways to also go after my dreams and my goals. So as we were talking and just getting to know each other, because we didn't actually go on a date until a month into talking because we had so much going on, but he was so consistent with reaching out and very clear with his intentions. I mean, right away, like he told me, I think you're cute. I really loved meeting you. But, you know, that night we had met a bunch of people. So I knew in the back of my head, oh, he's probably met a couple other girls. Like, I know I'm not the only one. So, like, I had to kind of have that open mind, but also loved how honest and clear he was with his intentions. And he was very consistent. Every single day he'd send me a voice message. And he asked me out within, you know, the first week of us talking. So I loved that consistency, and I was not used to that whatsoever. I mean, I was used to guys making me wait multiple days, you know, before they reached out, or they were too desperate and too excited to take me out. And it was a little like, wait, like, this is weird. Like, we just met. I'm not ready to marry you. So, you know, and so he was like very much in between that. And so I liked that. There was like tension there, but also clarity. So.
It sounds also like it was very like paced, right?
Yes.
So I felt like when I met Brody, just my nervous system felt like regulated. I felt safe because I feel like when a man's side comes on too strong, right? We don't feel safe because we're like, what does this guy want? Like, he doesn't even know me. Does he
Yeah.
want something that I can give him or not give him, or does it matter that it's me? Or could it be just
I've
anybody?
had guys call me wifey after I haven't even met them in person. You just met me on social media. You call me
Oh
wifey.
my gosh, those are the scammers.
You
a
know
lot
a
of
therapist? Like,
it. Yeah, or they're
it's scary.
Yeah.
But it's true, guys. But guys think that that's attractive.
Yeah.
You know, or I don't know. I think that's what they think.
so
Is that
inauthentic. Well, they'll say guys will say a lot of things if they think it's going to lead to something physical often.
Maybe
rather
they
than,
think
like,
because it sounds
relationally.
serious, like, oh, you're thinking of marriage, calling me wifey, so you're thinking of marriage, so you think I'm gonna want you because it sounds committal.
Yeah.
But maybe that's the train of thought, but
No.
it's very much repulsive.
Yeah, it's
Totally.
it's so inauthentic. But yeah, so it's so great to hear you say some other of these things that you mentioned, as far as you said that you were going to be, what was the word you said? You're facing intimidation.
Yeah.
But in a way,
breaking
it sounded
intimidation.
like what you were saying was you were also detached from the outcome. So
Yeah.
you were going to do it more for your own personal growth, whether he
Yes.
liked it or not, whether he
Totally.
was going to respond positively or negatively. You're like, I got to do this for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another concept we teach a lot on as far as feminine energy, which is the feminine is detached from the outcome. That she will be courageous and she will be vulnerable and she will speak up, but it's also from this place of like almost doing it for herself rather than doing it for the man, which is very
Right.
magnetic.
Yeah.
As opposed to the masculine, which is a masculine is about getting outcomes and making things happen, which is more attached to the outcome. And like, I have to make sure he responds positively or else I'm going to be devastated or else I'm a failure and I'm not attractive and all these other things. So it's a confident mindset for sure that you mentioned that I want to just bookmark for the women listening, that detachment from the outcome that you just expressed, that you were in that state at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that what I've just tried to implement in my life in all areas is that I have faith and I trust God, but everything else is up to Him with the outcome. I can't create the outcome. Otherwise, that's leaning into control. That's not trust.
Yeah,
You
beautiful.
know, and I think that so many women want to control. They want to put on all this effort and work on themselves and get the therapist and take the course and do the class. And, and it sounds all nice, but a lot of times it's vain effort and it's striving effort. It's not a surrendered effort. You can still partake of all of that, but do it because you know that you need to grow and you need the healing.
And then the extreme version of that is when women are trying to manage their men and they're trying to manage his perception of her and trying to walk on eggshells and put themselves into the perfect, like, I'm going to be the perfect woman for him and I don't want to offend him.
Diminish their own,
Or they'll become like his therapist, like, oh, he just needs healing. He's just not committing yet because he needs, he needs to find God, and I need to help him with that. I need to be like his pastor or his therapist
or his nanny,
or his
mom.
coach, his life coach or his relationship coach or his mommy. Yeah. So we talk about the difference between mommy energy and wifey energy, which I think is
I've
another
heard that.
great
Yeah, it's
distinction.
great.
Talking about wifey.
But really, a big piece here is that Tony Robbins talks about the 6 human needs, right? And that your highest need was actually growth. And that was it for me too when I met Brody. Instead of like saying certainty, right? Like, okay, so if I don't know how Cody is going to respond, well, I'm not going to say anything, right? Because most women will say that if I can't predict how Cody is going to respond.
They want to feel safe.
Yeah.
Safety is more
true.
important to them. For you, it was growth, because you're actually leaning into God and,
Right.
you know what I mean? You're trusting God, right?
Come on.
Or some women might not have even responded to him when he messaged him on Instagram and say like, oh, that's that guy who never texts me back. Like, I'm
That's
done with
that
him.
spirit of offense that is
Yeah.
hindering so many men and women right now because they're so critical and they're offended and they become bitter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people
That's-
carry it from a past
yeah.
experience of trauma and offense into future opportunity in relationship.
Like,
Which
oh, he's
probably,
just like my ex, or he's
yeah,
just.
and it probably ruins a lot of opportunities for great marriages
Very
and
true.
relationships.
I totally
Yeah, and it's
agree.
another form of certainty seeking. Like, I'd rather be certain that nothing's happening rather than the unknown of like, maybe this could work out. I'm just gonna like cut it off right now.
Can you actually ever truly be certain of anything in relationships?
I mean,
I don't
No,
think you
that's
So if you're searching for it and you find it, let me know.
that's the lesson. But I want to progress it with as far as your guys' journey. So after this state, as we talked about so far, what happened next, especially like any big moments, maybe some areas where you had conflict, but then you resolved it. How did you resolve it? And what also led you, Cody, to deepen your feelings for her moving forward?
I'll start with our first date because I think it is important. I did go to that event, and I did take a couple other women out on dates. And I had been in a season of my life of focusing on Cody, spending time with God, pursuing my career. I didn't date women. I started living in celibacy. I didn't sleep with women. Like, I honored God with my life. And I was now in a season where I was hungry to move into that next step and put myself out there again. So just to let you guys know, as a man, that's where I now was. But I was very clear that I was going to have a high standard, and I wasn't going to sleep with my wife before I married her. And I wanted to make sure she was in alignment with me and we could build a great future together. So going into these dates with these women, and Esther being one of them, the first thing I really think that I thought was cool, that was like, oh, wow. I'm a very driven guy, and I intimidate a lot of people. So when a woman, like Esther, challenges me a little, it's also attractive in a healthy, feminine way. And what I thought was cool is I invited her to coffee, and she told me no. But not like, no, I'm not going to go to coffee with you. Like, no, but I'll go on an adventure with you. And I'm an adventure-seeking kind of guy. And I was like, oh, yeah, I like you even more now, And so we planned this epic hike out into Three Sisters Waterfalls near Julian. And our first date, she came and picked me up, wanted to make her feel safe. So I rode with her in her car, and we went out there, and it was really cool. We got to know each other on the drive, and we talked, and we began to get to know each other. It was a long drive, it was an hour and 15-minute drive, plenty of time to talk. You're forced to do that in a car together. And then I think the hike was amazing, and it was beautiful, and it was challenging. I like doing hard things with people. Like, I get to know someone when something's challenging, like, who are you really? And then we get to the waterfalls, and there's 3 beautiful waterfalls.
So have you guys been out there?
No, not yet.
Beautiful
go.
hike. And you got to go like around springtime when the rains are coming because it isn't always waterfalls. It flows down from the mountains. And so we get there, and there was some younger people cliff jumping, like a 30-foot jump into a waterfall. And I look at her, I was like, well, there's no way we hiked all the way up here and we're not jumping in. And she's like, no way, Jose. And I'm like, imagine the story we'd be writing right now. I know she's an author.
What we could tell our kids.
He's just like wooing me and romancing this whole jump. I'm like, oh.
And I was like, we'll do it together at the same time. And I didn't think she was going to do it, but I obviously was trying to convince her to. And she's like, okay, I'll do it. And so we jumped in this waterfall together. And I know it sounds cheesy, but I like, even in that jump down, I'm like, this is a girl I could see myself pursuing. Like, you were willing to trust me. You were willing to take a leap. You're willing to be adventurous. And you don't see that as much today with women. And I haven't seen it much out here in Southern California, to be honest. So that was really attractive to me. And then from there, we went down to Julian. We had apple pie. It was great, and ice cream. And I think that was a moment for me where I'd gone on other dates, and I was like, this is the woman I want to pursue. Because she's driven, she knows where she's going with her life. She doesn't need me to be happy. She's adventurous, and I could see a future with her. And we're so early in dating. I'm not trying to marry her, but just knowing I'm willing to go on another date with her. I wasn't willing to go on another date with the other girls.
And I think that's like a good point for the women watching, because we women are more like, oh my God, this is my future husband. Or this is, you know what I mean? Like, I could really see this is, we had like one client, and this is the dad of my child, and so I love that you really keep it real, Cody. Thanks for saying that, right? The guys are like, okay, like what I'm asking myself is, am I going on a second date with her?
The next step.
Not like,
One step at a time.
Thinking about just,
you know what I mean? Like,
and I think maybe after 3, 4, 5 dates, there is a shift.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, if I'm gonna, at least for I think guys that have good values, I would never lead a woman on.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a lot of guys that will. But me personally, my own standard, if I'm not intentional about dating, I would not continue to date a girl after 3, 4, 5 dates.
Yeah, totally.
Because I would make room for another guy to do that was really intentional about pursuing her.
Wow.
And I want to ask you, Esther, what was your mindset during that whole adventure.
Yeah. Let's hear the other side.
Literally an adventure.
You know, I think that I was just having so much fun with him. And it was the best first date I have ever been on. We both have always said that.
Nailed it.
Nice.
It was. And I was just like really excited to get to know him. And on that date, he shared more of his story and his background with me. And I just was excited to continue to hopefully go on more dates. And it just felt right. It felt good. But at the same time, I was in that season where I had my wits about me, knowing that I'm not going to be 10 steps ahead of him. If he's not pursuing, then I'm not going to assume where this is going. So I think that I really stayed in this place of just like trusting the process. We always said that. And we lived off of voice texting. I don't know if people do that enough these days, but it was so good too, because we lived an hour apart too. And so we only saw each other on the weekends or every other weekend. And he was just always sending me a voice message in the morning and just giving me enough to feel pursued and to feel like affirmed by him. But also, like you said, like there was like a graceful cadence of our getting to know stage. And also we were really prayerful about it and allowed people to speak into it. And so there was just like these little moments of, wow, that just gave me a lot of confidence. I can trust the next step. And oh, wow, I know he's planning ahead because he mentioned this event and he invited me to it. So we're going somewhere here. I'm not going to be waiting around. Is this guy going to call me? I never felt uncertain or like I had to question his intentions at any point in that pursuit. And I think that that's so key, and that's the hard part in dating, is that so many women want to fill in the gaps of, oh, maybe he's this, and maybe he's just busy, or maybe, it's just like, if you're having to question it, is not pursuit.
Yeah.
I'd say that's probably most of the women who come to us, that they're with a man right now who is giving them sort of mixed signals, wishy-washy, breadcrumbs. And that's one of the consistent things we've seen with the couples. We've heard their stories, and our story is very similar, which is this consistency factor, and also that the man is pretty clear up front about his intentions and that he's interested and that he wants to take things seriously in a way.
Men that don't know what they want, and the world we're in is over-sexualizing women to men. So there's also like, I'm just going to go there, there is this overstimulation to guys of women. And I think I've met a lot of young guys and even friends I've known. And my opinion on this, if you're not rooted in the Word of God and you don't learn your identity from that, it's very easy to get so off cue with this to where you're just of the world. And I think that guys, they'll meet a pretty girl, they'll go on a date, they're interested, but they struggle to commit because the world's over-sexualizing women at them every day. So they might be talking also to this girl a little bit and this girl.
Can I get a hotter girl? Like,
yeah,
maybe
and that's
I could
the
find
mind. Can I get a
better.
prettier girl?
It's very
So I think
consumer
there is some truth to that, but there's something about a level of consistency on both sides that creates a stability of attraction, in my opinion. She was also consistent. And we did talk probably almost every day, but not all day. I work a lot. I was building businesses. So I had a routine. It was really easy to be drinking a cup of coffee, caffeinated, and shoot a voice message to the girl I was interested in and talking to. And then when I got off work that night from my business, I was on calls all day at 5 to see her response and reply then. But like, I didn't respond to her for 8-9 hours that day. She wasn't waiting around like, oh my God, is he going to text me back? But I also proved, hey, I will always get back to you when I can. And I think she did the same for me. And I think that really helped.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I mean, men, the more masculine are, the more single-focused they are, right? And I think one thing I'd love for you to talk about, because you really talk about that you're like on purpose, right? And so in another excuse, quote unquote, that we hear from our women, it's like, oh, he needs to just focus on his business for the next 3 years, and then he's going to make time for me. And you made time for Esther in addition to, your purpose. So what was your mindset around that? Was that also like, oh, I'm just going to, work for the next 3 years, my butt off, and then I go on my wifey search? Or Yeah, I mean, like, what
And
was
I
your...
think guys try to control everything more even than women.
Yeah.
And we try to, I'm going to go make $1 million and I'm going to get my life here and I'm going to be this fitness level and, you know, all that, this thing. And then I'll find my wife. And it's
Yeah.
not true. No, it's all a lie. And
Yeah.
that's trying to control things. I'll share this. I think it would help. I had a mentor in my life that I was talking to and I was very driven. And I asked him, I said, how do I know, like, when I meet my wife? Like, how do I know? And he just said, Cody, you're going to be running hard and fast at what God has called you to in your life. Go build a business. Go do the thing. Go live out your calling. But one day you will look to your right and your wife will be running next to you. And when she is, don't be afraid to talk to her. And that's what happened. It's just crazy. It's like it actually happened. I was running hard, passed my lane. I looked to my right one day. This girl at this table. I buy her book. She writes her number, and I'm like, cool. I'll reach out to her. And next thing you know, I'm married to her.
Because she'll be running just as fast.
And she could
the
keep
cliff.
up. And she jumped off. Yeah. And
You gotta be able to keep up.
so I think like I wish women could understand too. It is okay to go for your calling. Here's the thing I think that I've seen career women mess up is when the guy does appear running next to her, she says no because she just focuses on career. And I have seen women do that. And then lives with regret later because you never did get married, you never did have a kid.
Or because she made more money than him, or he's not like on her level now, and so now she has a different perception of herself and what she thinks she deserves. And he's a really great guy, but yet like you're married to your career at this point.
Yeah, and I think we're all running in our lane really fast, trying to be the best version of ourselves. Hopefully you are. If you're not, start doing that. And eventually, you know, you run and you end up in a congruency next to someone at a time and a place. There's alignment, there's attraction, and you're like, hey, you know, and from there it grows. So that's my 2 cents.
And then with commitment, talking about commitment, so what were the next stages in your relationship, especially moving towards that proposal, moving towards marriage? What shifted in your heart and what made you really clear? You already mentioned some of it. You were like clearly on the path to that. But was there anything else that led to that certainty within yourself and your heart? And we talked about, you know, men being over-sexualized. And how did you personally cut through the noise and say, like, Esther's my woman, and you got to that place, and what progressed to that?
Couple things. One, a good friend of mine, Justin Maina, who was the one that did the podcast, invited me to the event, called me, and he said, hey, man, where are you going with all this in Esther? Like, my friend asked me. He's like, she really likes you. I know you've gone on a date with a few other girls. Are you serious?
This was before we were boyfriend and girlfriend.
Yeah, we weren't. So I just
Was
want
this before or after the cliff jumping?
That
It was after.
It was
cliff
after. Okay, so
jumping.
you were still had some women you were still sort of casually dating.
But
He
he didn't know like the full picture. He known
Yeah.
I'd gone on dates with those women one time.
Okay,
But
got
he
it.
was just more, he cared about her.
Yeah.
He's
And
our
he-
best friend, and
he's
I
like
had
our best
called
friend.
him to vet out Cody, and so I had told him what I thought of Cody and wanted to get some intel.
And
there.
right after the call, he calls me.
And so then but he had my back.
So there's a
Okay.
level like right between there's a commitment to go on a date with a girl that has to be made in a man's mind. Then there's a commitment of am I going to pursue just her? That commitment was made in that moment where I decided I think a real man personally pursues one woman at a time. I think it's okay to go on a couple dates. I think it's okay to play the field and find out what you like. But I think if you're going to continue to do that, you should not do that with multiple people. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, after like a certain stage.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a certain stage
Yeah.
because
2-3 dates.
she's
Yeah.
becoming attracted to me and I'm becoming attracted to her, and that's leading someone on if I'm also doing that with multiple other options. So there was a commitment that was made around them where I was like, hey, I'm going to pursue just you. And then I'm old school. I courted her in a way before we were boyfriend and girlfriend. We went on multiple dates. And then I invited her to Awaken Church, a musical that's called Hero the Rock. It's not like corny like you'd think, like church musical. It's like Broadway. And we're there, and that's when I asked. I'm so funny. I just think about this memory. I'm like, hey, will you go steady with me?
Yeah. He really asked me if I would go
People
steady.
even use that word.
I know. I'm like the only one.
Funny and cute.
I like the old
and
school.
I was not expecting it in that moment. Like, we could have been at Sunset Cliffs.
Yeah.
But it was cute.
So there was a commitment. They were once.
Was it during or after the show?
It was during.
Before.
Was it before?
It was before. We're eating like our
Oh,
popcorn.
wow. That's even more interesting. Then she was thinking about that the whole show.
I'm like, I have a
What does this mean,
boyfriend.
steady? Does that mean we're exclusive? I have to look it up on Google.
I wouldn't even know what that
Yeah.
means.
Yeah.
You never
ChatGPT.
done that? Like an old school thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was when we got like serious and official.
But then engagement out, like
Yeah.
leading to that, there. You asked about difficult times. We're not all sunshine and rainbows, guys. There was the reality of, in a man's mind, oh my God, like marriage, it's come up in conversation. There's things. Do I want to propose to this girl? And we went through some tough times in that. You know, there was. I was like all in and on the path and steady and consistent, and then I started second guessing it as a man. And I think it's not a bad thing to go through that process to make you're sure you want to marry someone. Because I was like, I know what this means. Like, I'm in this for a lifetime, and like I'm doing the best I can. I'm not perfect, to align my life with God's word, and I know a covenant's made before God that I'm not going to break. So if I marry her, no matter what happens, she could be the worst wife ever. Like, I'm sticking by her, you know? No, I love you. You're not. And
Thank God.
turned out great.
Got
turned out
lucky.
great. Praise God. So we, you know, it's interesting. The battle I had to deal with the spirit of lust. And there was a time where we sat in my car one time. We came back from a date, and I said, I'm struggling with attraction issues to you. And I, you know, like, it was becoming real. Like, you have to think about, do I want to sleep with this woman for the rest of my life? I'm never going to sleep with another woman. Like, those are things we should talk about.
Yeah.
And we had a very vulnerable, like, can you imagine being a woman and hearing that from the guy you've been dating? Like, and I shared this with her, and we talked about it. Best thing that ever happened in our relationship. And I knew as we talked, it was going to break us or make us.
Wow.
Because out of that, we became more attracted to each other than we've ever been in our entire life. And it created a solid foundation of certainty of, okay, we both are willing to go into an engagement. I'll stop there.
What's that verse in the Bible of, you know, that which can be shaken and what remains after being shaken?
Yeah.
It's like, that's the foundation, right?
And it was shook.
Yeah.
It was very much shook. Yeah.
It's interesting because we also, before we got married, we did what's called a shadow ceremony, which we learned. And back then, I don't think this is Christian necessarily, but it was what it was. We learned it. We were New Age before we became Christian, but
Wow.
I don't necessarily it was a New Age thing. But basically, what we did is we had like an anti-wedding before we got married, where we shared our deepest fears with each other. It was like, oh, you know, the wedding's all beautiful and promises and the hope of the future, but this was
Right.
like, well, we wanted this to be authentic, so we're going to shake some things and get the foundation. We're going to actually let's just talk about all of it, all of our deepest fears, insecurities before we get married. It was almost like exactly what you did, but this was like right before the day before our wedding. So
Oh, wow.
it would have been,
Like the night before
Timing
wedding.
of that.
it would have been,
I don't know if I would have.
Were you
Can
thinking
you
about the
imagine
thing
that
that
something would have come out and be like,
Right.
oh, oops.
yeah, well,
Yeah,
maybe
all
we
the
should have
people
talked
there,
about
the
this months
food
before.
buy.
Yeah, well, yeah, it would have
In
been funny.
hindsight.
Yeah, it would have been nicer to probably do it a couple months beforehand. But it's cool that you guys did a similar process like beforehand to talk about those fears and to talk about what's coming up. And then, so I'm curious what then happened. You guys had this conversation. You got very clear on you were ready to commit, or like how did you overcome those
and
fears?
there's one thing I want to say, and this is Esther's heard me say this, so it's nothing she hasn't heard. Yeah, so we have an emotional side of our brain, right? Of like, am I emotionally going to be attracted to you and connected with you for the rest of my life? Like, do I see that? And we got that worked out. But there's also another side of our brain. It's a logical side. As a man, like, you logically should think through, do I want to marry this woman? Do I want to spend the rest of my life with her? And my lens of doing that was very simple. Are you an asset for my life, or are you a liability for my life? And I say that because I think I've seen very successful men, and I know I'm going to be successful. I'm a driven guy. I'm already successful, and I'm only going to become more successful. Marrying the wrong woman just because she's pretty and I'm emotionally attracted to her, but later we get a divorce and it's ugly, is going to be a massive liability to my life and what my purpose is. And I that was the one thing I've never wanted to do. I never had a marriage modeled healthy for me from my parents. So I'm not going to make a mistake of marrying a woman that's a liability for my life. I'd rather be single the rest of my life than marry a liability. And I don't think a lot of guys run this through, but what I will marry is an asset to my life. If you go invest into a stock, you should do your research and invest into a good asset that you know is going to grow and compound and yield you great, reward. You don't invest into a liability, or if you're going to invest into an asset class like real estate, you do your research and you know that real estate's going to over time be worth more money and you're going to get an investment out of it.
Inspect the house.
So I clearly ran Esther through a rigorous, in my mind, even on paper, of like thinking through things and qualities and things I noticed about her and who she was. I just needed to know in my logical side of my brain, to the best that I can, you're never fully certain, that if I married this woman, she's an asset to my life. And she 100% was. And I actually came to a revelation that I would be dumb not to marry her. That I finally met a woman that I saw made me a better man, made me want to be, more focused, work harder, show up better for her, and would be an incredible mother, history of nannying and all these things. So it was like, man, you will be such a great wife. I am a better guy married to you. And you'll be an incredible mom when we have kids. And I could see spending the rest of my life with someone who has those qualities and I'm attracted to. That to me is like the woman I want to marry. Yeah. And then it just comes down to me being a man and making a decision to commit to that.
Mm-hmm. I can hear a lot of women though watching this and almost like their red flags going up in that spirit of offense, kind of being like, wait, what do you mean asset? Like,
am I property?
She's just there to like, wait on you hand and foot, and like, so you just want like a trad wife, and that whole trend of the trad wife right now, which really just irks me.
Which is really just wife.
It's just like
view.
a traditional like irons your clothes and cooks for you and is the wife and perfect and all these things, but that is not what he's saying at all.
Esther's an entrepreneur like me. Run our companies together.
We build business, we build life, we build God's kingdom together. He's explaining a partnership, which I think is not a concept that a lot of women are going into dating with. They're just wanting to be loved and cared for and affirmed, which is beautiful, and those are components of a relationship, but that's not the foundation of it. Mm-hmm. And we looked at each other and we said, okay, yes, do we make each other better? But can we build a life together where his dreams I'm supporting and my dreams he's supporting? And man, he has only opened up so much in my life to help me see myself the way God made me and access gifts inside me I never knew were there. And it should be like that. So that really is the asset that you should be looking for.
Yeah, and you should, as a woman, you should look at a man, is he going to be an asset? There are natural needs a woman has. She wants to be provided for. She wants to feel safe. She wants to feel loved. Like, there are some things biologically wired in a woman that she needs to feel from a man in order to, I would imagine, from my studies that I've done. And a man also, he has things too. Let me just say for the record, women, it's more than just beauty and looks. That fades. In marriage, now I'm married, like the sex and the attraction is amazing, but that's such a small percentage of doing life with another human being. Like, our finances are entangled, our goals, our visions, our dreams, how we spend our days, what we do, the food we eat, like all of that is combined together to become one. And so if you don't think through, are you an asset to who I feel called to be in this world, and you marry someone that doesn't align with that, it's going to be really difficult to make it work. You have to sacrifice in marriage, but you're going to sacrifice on a whole new level.
Yeah, in ways that you shouldn't.
100%. And I think, when women are more on the anxious side, they don't think about that. They just think about the rose-colored glasses and, and they don't think about, wait, a guy could also be a liability. So it's actually, I think, part of like a high-value woman is being like, is this guy a liability to be? Am I going to be drained? Am I going to be just... the housewife, and I have to bring in the money because secretly he doesn't want to work, or secretly he doesn't really have a purpose, and he's going to hit this midlife crisis when he's 40 that I don't see yet because he's 30, and so I love that, what you described, because I think women should also run themselves through like a process as well.
You should vet that dude.
Right?
And he should vet you. And when you both vet each other and you're both like, hey, you passed. Hey, you passed.
Yeah.
Move forward.
Totally. And pay more attention to the actions, right? I think that's what I see with both of you. It's like actions, because our women are so much talk. You know, we just talked about this yesterday in a group call. Like, just if you were toning down the volume, if you watch a movie and the movie no longer makes sense, like it's probably time to exit.
You know, my
what I mean?
buddy's in
Like,
advertising. He calls it the bar test. When you're at a bar and the volume's not on, can you still tell what's going on in the commercial? We're shooting an ad for a Christian Entrepreneur Club, and he said it has to pass the bar test. You know, so if you can't tell what's going on without the audio, then it don't pass the bar test.
yeah, totally, 100%.
One thing that helped me a lot too when I was dating was this phrase that one of my dating coaches gave me, which was how a relationship starts is generally how it will continue. So the way I view it also to see if somebody's an asset or a liability is, if things were to continue as it is now with nothing changing, would I be okay with that? Because some women, they get into situations where they've had to bend themselves into a pretzel to make him happy, to not offend him, or walking on eggshells, or it's just like a stressful thing, or he's missing a lot of qualities that they want, but they're like, well, he could get those qualities later. He's working on it, or he's getting healing, or he's seeing a therapist. But it's like, yeah, but if nothing were to change how it is now, would you be okay with that? And generally the answer is no.
It's always no.
It's always
right?
no.
It's always
but
no.
it gets two lessons from that. It's like, well, for one, don't bend yourself in a pretzel from the beginning, because like speak up, be authentic, because you don't want to have to manage that. This old saying, he who stands on tiptoe is not steady. So it's like you're going to have this relationship where you're standing on tiptoes the whole time, and that's going to eventually you're going to fall down. And it's going to be painful. And then also don't expect him to change, because there's a high chance he won't. And so you can't rely on that.
And the other piece I wanted to say is about that men unconsciously test. I mean, women unconsciously test too, right? And so how Cody tested was like when he started second guessing, right? And that's where so many women start to freak out, right? And then a man is like, oh, actually, I should not marry this woman.
It really messed with the test
like,
up.
you know what I mean?
wow.
Like,
That's a good
You know what I
point.
mean? Because
She
there
could have handled
are...
her response in that conversation in that car.
Yeah,
Like, that could have went south so fast.
yeah,
She didn't, though.
yeah.
Yeah, what was your mindset, Esther, when he was bringing that up?
Well, of course, like you're hurt by that.
Yeah.
But I think I had a lot of empathy. I just felt a lot of empathy. I think I went through that in my own way at a different stage of our relationship, and God really worked on my heart and spoke to me through that and really helped unravel some things inside of me. So I kind of felt a little bit like, oh, he's going through the same thing I went through, but in a different way. But now I'm on the other side and I'm feeling it. Whereas I had never vocalized anything because it was just more of an internal process that I had gone through. But for him, he needed to vocalize it. And so I think that I really needed to learn to detach from being hurt by him and realize that, okay, like this is something he's dealing with that he deserves to process, and he deserves to journey through that, and he deserves to choose his own outcome. And as hard as it was for me in that season, I would always tell him, like, I love you. And it's even emotional thinking back on, but I would always say, like, I love you and I want to be with you, but I want you to know that, like, I'm okay. I'll be okay if you feel like you need to move on. And that's really hard to say. That's really hard to, like, even, tell someone that you see a future with. But I really just felt like I knew that he cared about me, and he cared about even how he handled that. And so he wasn't, like, recklessly just being like, I'm just not attracted to you. Like, you're so ugly to me. That wasn't it. He would tell me, like, you're beautiful. I'm just dealing with this. And I don't know the root of it, but I'm going to go get help. Like, he wasn't just, like, stagnant in that either. He was seeking counsel. He was seeking God himself. And it was a process. It was a couple months, honestly, that we had to keep having honest conversations about. But like he said, it was the best thing because it connected us and it grew us closer and it helped us, like, get clarity for the future.
And it gave me the freedom to make that decision on my own. And I think most humans, not just women, are so scared of losing something they want that they won't create space for the other person to have the time to figure that out on their own. And because she did that, the opposite effect happened. I worked through my problem, but I became more attracted and knew, wow, this woman, I said a thing that hurt her so much, and she gave me the space to figure it out and said, whatever the outcome is, I'll still love you. And I'm okay with it. And I don't think people do that in relationships because we're so emotionally charged that
Yeah.
we don't remove ourselves from that. And one other thing I want to say to women that bend themselves, like you said, like a pretzel, and like he'll change. Don't marry the idea of who someone can become. I just felt that in my head, and I just wanted to say it. We should never marry the idea of someone. Who you're with now is who you're committing to. Maybe they get better, maybe they get worse. But marrying an idea and a dream, fantasy outcome of a human being is setting yourself up for a disaster. And I think a lot of people do this. Like, I've seen guys do this with women. I've seen women do it with guys. And I've also seen it end in ugly divorce.
Yeah, totally. So my parents did too. Like, and there's the saying, right? Like, men marry women hoping they stay the same, and women marry men in general hoping that they will change.
Yeah, this seems to be part of the human condition. But it reminds me of the principle from Don Miguel Ruiz, the 4 agreements. Don't take anything personally, right? You try to avoid, you were avoiding taking it personally when he was going through his stuff, and say, look, it's not necessarily about me, it's about his process. And I actually empathize that he's going through this because I've gone through some myself. But it's like it went through you, which is another version of different way of being detached from the outcome. And you were in your feminine, you were holding space, and you were supportive. You weren't being his therapist and trying to help guide him through it. But you were just, it sounds like you were just there and just kind of being there for him, and like, I still love you regardless. And that was just really, you were not trying to intervene in his process. You just let him go through his process, and he came out exactly how he needed to come out, and he went through his cocoon, and then he was your husband basically on the other side of that, like real ready to commit husband, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think through the process of course, just like really allowing God to transform you, because there's roots. There's roots of, like you said, lust in that, and there's roots of hurt and wounds from the past and soul ties from past relationships, and that really was the answer. And it all comes back to that trust in the Lord in our journey, and that trust in the Lord with my future spouse. I'm dating this man who I believe we're going to get married, but God, it's ultimately up to you, and to lead us in your peace and lead us in transformation, and to trust that maybe that this is a turning point for me or for him.
Totally.
And that's really hard. That's really hard to even just be honest with yourself and be like, I thought that, but I thought you put this man in my life, or I thought this was going to happen. But even to just be like, hey, Lord, but your will be done, and allow him to move.
And, this is the first woman I ever dated with the intention of marriage like this that I never slept with. So you also have to understand that I grew up in the world, raised by a single mom. My dad was in prison my whole life, running the streets, started having sex at a young age. I had to work through a lot of things and mature and grow as a man, and I was at a different season of my life. So I'm pursuing marriage, and those past things and soul ties and doing that haunted me. So for the first time in my life, I'm building a real relationship not rooted on lust. When you sleep with someone, there's an exchange of chemistry in the body and a spiritual soul tie too. I truly believe that also helps you stay attracted to somebody. I don't believe you should have that until you get married personally and have a covenant, because what it did is we built a sturdy table.
Yeah.
We built a foundation to build marriage on that wasn't rooted on a temporary, physical, lustful attraction. But on the same token of doing that, I had lustful relationships before. And because I wasn't feeling that in this relationship, there were things I had to process as a man that were hard.
It created doubt in his mind, because he
yeah.
only knew how to sexually connect.
Totally.
And so then when you remove that, then it's like, what's left? And then you're having to
Right.
navigate all the emotional healing and the spiritual healing, which there's a lot to that.
Yeah.
It's like when a
100%.
woman's finally dating a man who's emotionally available, and she's so used to all the men she dates of being
Yeah.
unavailable, so then it's like feels weird, like, well, there's something missing. I'm not having to be anxious about him or chase him or like manage his perception of me.
Right.
There must be something wrong. It's like, well, that's actually what a healthy relationship feels like.
Yeah. That's why you need good counsel. You need, people
need
like you
mentors,
guys
you need coaches,
Perspective,
you need
yeah.
counsel.
because you are going to make emotional decisions if you're not seeking that.
Well, you guys are just absolutely amazing. Like it's, we've met you guys like 3 times now, and it's been so extraordinary to actually hear the story. And thank you for being so raw and real, because that's Brody and me too. We're just like authentic, transparent, real. Because otherwise, what are you building?
Yeah.
If there's like masks and anything else you want to
I think
say to that, like if you have something wonderful that you guys have to
for
share,
the women who want to see what you guys have to offer as
Exactly,
well, what
yeah.
would be some of your guys' gifts and what you would recommend?
Well, he's not exactly in the relationship space. we have a Christian Entrepreneur Club business that we run together. But for those seeking, counsel.
And 7 Peaks and then your stuff.
Yeah, so that's a great idea, actually. So we do have a free community for personal development, faith-based personal development. So if you're interested in growing yourself and getting after that mission and that calling, like we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, head to 7peaksofinfluence.com, and that'll get you all connected to our community. We do a once-a-month call. And then for those that are seeking relationship guidance, my focus is really the belief at the core of how you view yourself and your relationship with God and your relationship with others. And so you can go to estmarie.org to get connected to all my resources, courses, books. Single Shouldn't Suck. It's available on Amazon. And find us on Instagram, I guess.
Yeah, come connect with us. We make some cool content.
Cuddle with the cuddles.
Cuddle with the
Come
coddle.
cuddle with the coddles.
It's the name of our next episode.
Yeah, I am Cody Coddle on Instagram, and we make a lot of content really just to encourage people to become who God's created them to be.
Yeah.
Women want to attract a man, become very confident in your identity and assured in yourself, and that will help and develop yourself. It's not, to me, I say it all the time, there's nothing more sexy than someone that works on themselves.
100%. Totally.
Amen to that. Yeah, we'll put all the links that they mentioned below in the description. And of course, also our quiz, if you want to take our Magnetize Your Man quiz, help you get a loving long-term relationship as well. And hope this was helpful. Much love. Leave your comments below. I'm sure you had some good thoughts and insights. I would like to hear all the top takeaways from this interview. Post them below, and we'll talk to you again very soon. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.